On September 18, 1970, the great Jimi Hendrix left. The main feature of the era was that he became one of the most critical and revolutionary guitarists and performers in the history of the electric guitar. Accustomed to his explosive art and the extraordinary capacity for profound influence exercised in rock music, his death is steeped in controversy and speculation. What happened on his last day, and was the catastrophic fall avoidable? The life of Jimi. Jimi Hendrix's life started out rough but spiraled into legendary status within the music realm in no time. In an early life fraught with instability, Jimi found a broken ukulele and, from it, found solace with music. This instilled an intense passion for rock and blues that would mold into an innovative sound. His performances in Seattle exposed the budding talent that seemed to be leading music into a new era. Early beginnings. His childhood was unstable and difficult, yet it was inherently filled with musical influences. So, through his mother's intermittent presence and her death at an early age, there was this vast emotional gap that Jimi sought to fill with music. He found a broken ukulele in his grandma's garbage at a tender age. He learned his first tunes from a single string, indicative of his later ability to coax complex music from minimal equipment. This first exposure to music sparked a passion in him that would change not only his life but also rock music itself. Development of musical identity. His teenage years, as much as a formative force, were marked with the transition of Hendrix from playing broomsticks and air guitars to an actual guitar, his most prized gift from his father, with which he taught himself many styles of music. In this period, Jimi had a significant influence on rock and roll and rhythm and blues music, which was really in its prime at the end of the 1950s. He would spend hour upon hour studying the guitar sounds of both the rock pioneers and blues legends, internalizing them into his own rapidly developing style. By the time he was in his late teens, Hendrix had been playing with the local bands in Seattle. He was showing a precocious talent that had begun to set him apart from his peers. Striving for musical excellence. Hendrix's never-say-die inspiration and unwavering devotion to his craft lit the path from the smoky clubs of Seattle to the glittering top of fame. His very early on-stage experiences with varied audiences helped him develop an assured presence and understanding of the dynamics necessary to reach people. During this time, Hendrix continued experimenting with sounds and technique approaches, mainly with the volume turned way above standard settings on his gear, trying to make sounds reflecting his inner experiences and reflections. The Chitlin Circuit and beyond. Hendrix had spent years on the Chitlin Circuit, venues marked safe for black musicians at a time when the apartheid regime still ruled over the states, and this time had been very fortunate given his musical guidance and stagecraft. There he learned the art of complementing while playing the background for bands for various soul, blues, and R&B singers. While crafting spaces for him to show off his style. This will set him in good stead for the future success he will command in the UK and internationally. Breakthrough in Britain. It was probably his move to London in 1966 that set him on the fast track to international stardom. Here he formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and from there on the world started rocking. Hendrix flourished in the capital's welcoming environment for new musical expression. For the British, his vivid use of guitar feedback, distortion, and extended solos was unprecedented. The Jimi Hendrix Experience became one of the hottest bands in the UK relatively quickly, and massive acclaim across Europe and eventually in the United States was not far off. Mastery of the electric guitar. It was in London that Hendrix fully displayed his mania for the guitar, involving sophisticated chord sequences, control of feedback, and flamboyant showmanship that completely overpowered his listeners. He redefined the electric guitar from an uncomplicated musical vehicle into an extension of himself that would afford experimentation with its very being and expression. Hendrix's approach to the guitar, through the use of the wah-wah pedal, it has been said, suggested that he was manipulating tone and pitch like a horn player, bringing an entirely new musical language to the guitar that still has musicians and producers picking apart his every note. Icon of psychedelia and change. By the late 1960s, Hendrix had emerged as a defining persona in psychedelic music, an embodiment of the strong counterculture movement. What would ensue from there would be performances equally iconic through his status in musical history and exemplifying the social and cultural revolutions of the times. Songs like Purple Haze and The Winds May Cry would turn into anthems for a generation, with norms being redefined and expression giving vent to a much more expanded set of human, emotions, and experiences. In fact, Hendrix's music was both his personal and life examples of how to find wide recognition amongst youth for a new style of more accessible, more experimental sound, together with life attitudes. Now tell us, what is your favorite Jimi Hendrix song? Let us know down in the comment section below. Evolution of a musical legacy. Hendrix remained a breath of fresh air and a source of inspiration to many throughout his career because he never became a man who would ever rest on his laurels. His subsequent compositions started to have a more soulful, funk-oriented sound, which is indicative of his constant exploration of new musical ground. Thus, he reflected this growth in the musician's artistic maturity and a desire to test himself and his audience. He inspired hundreds of thousands of guitarists to be a little more than they dreamed the electric guitar could be. As we explore more of his legendary tricks, you'll want to subscribe to catch every note of this one-of-a-kind journey. In the meantime, remember to stay tuned. The day everything changed. It had a tragic end for Jimi Hendrix on a fateful September evening in 1970, at a momentous crossroad in music history. At the Samarkand Hotel in London, dreamy talks about art turned deadly when Hendrix swallowed a fatal cocktail of barbiturates and alcohol. His death at 27 left a legacy of musical innovation and promise unfulfilled. Tragic turn at the Samarkand Hotel. It was on that evening of September 17, 1970, that a tragic chain of events started to unfold. Events that were about to bring an untimely death to Jimi Hendrix. It had been at Notting Hill's Samarkand Hotel. His last hours lay complete with a melting pot of musical inspiration, as with any other hope-filled night spent playing for the next day. As the night advanced, his friends could not help but notice a rather severe alteration in him. From the normally genial, buoyant person he always was to a more severe and even subdued person. It was as if it were a prelude to the tragic events that were going to be happening afterwards. The last conversions. On this last evening, Jimi had the company of Monica Dannemann, with whom he was dating during that time. She would later reveal that they talked about common stuff in their relationship, up to detailed conversations regarding Hendrix's musical future and the topics of their talks.
All the newspapers, they wrote Jimi Hendrix died of a drug overdose.
They talked about his dreams of new musical breakthroughs, the frustrations he's been suffering in the music industry, and his desire to withdraw from the public and create a private space where he can produce more introspective, personal works. These conversations drew a relatively clear image of a man standing at the crossroads, full of desire to evolve artistically, but at the same time, he seemed deeply tortured under the weight of his fame. A night gone wrong. It was in the early hours of the 18th of September that a very fateful decision was taken. Dannemann was the person who pronounced that Hendrix had taken a vast amount of her prescribed sleeping tablets. What Hendrix had ingested was a toxic level of the drug over the effective therapeutic dosage, swallowed many times, and had a physiological effect that was too rapid and aggressive, unbeknownst to him. The combination of barbiturates and alcohol he had taken previously that night is even considered lethal due to respiratory insufficiency. The desperate hours. They were getting on towards the witching hour then, and the situation was getting worse. Dannemann now grew panicky at the realization of how shaky Hendrix had become. She had hesitated to get on the phone for an ambulance so helplessly. Now, it was that critical mistake that she made in a situation that was moving way too fast. By the time the paramedics arrived at the scene, Hendrix was unconscious. They tried to save him. It was even obvious that they did it desperately, but the emergency respondents declared Jimi Hendrix dead upon his arrival at St. Mary's Hospital. Asphyxia from aspiration of vomit, complicated by barbiturate intoxication, was announced as the official cause of death. The aftermath? The inquest into his death began several weeks later, and it brought more questions than answers when a coroner returned an open verdict, doing little to ease the public speculations and rumors. With no clear evidence or timing marked the investigation, this allowed many theories to continue after his death, from accidental overdose to a much more sinister implication of foul play. The music world and his fans wrestled with the realization of his abrupt departure, raising questions and discussions on the predicament that led to the legendary musician's tragic end. Legacy of the Last Day. This is the story of Jimi Hendrix's death. Following his passing, the music industry and his fans all over the world expressed their sorrow, while also receiving a flood of tributes and commemorations. Musicians and fans paused for some time to remember the impact Hendrix had on their lives and the world of music. His revolutionary way of playing the guitar and how he contributed to the sound of rock and roll was paid tribute with concerts, memorial services, and spontaneous gatherings. In the decades following his death, the last day of Jimi Hendrix has been investigated and mythologized, giving further credence to the legend that has come to surround his life and career. He left a truly indelible mark on history. The tragic end of Jimi Hendrix sounds echoes the mysterious circumstances surrounding Janis Joplin's death. And please, Do check out the story of her life next time. And please remember to click the subscribe button, and don't forget to like, share, and comment down below with any stories that you believe must be heard. Until next time, let's keep the legends alive.